Good morning. Welcome to our webinar, today's Technology and You presentation. My name is Matt Patten. I'm the CEO here at Cutler Investment Group. Happy to have you. Thank you for joining us today. It's going to be a great one. If you miss any part of this, if you have questions along the way, there is a Q&A box. Please feel free to type in any questions. We'll try to address them as we go along. We'll also be recording this and putting it up on our website so you can follow along later and catch any parts you might have missed. Of course, we're happy to answer any questions after fact. Just contact me or your advisor here at Cutler, and we'll be happy to address them. First, our disclosures. For those of you that have been here on one of our presentations before, you've likely seen these. This is a little bit different because we're not necessarily talking about investments. I know last week you might have joined us for the investment call where Brian Knudsen from our Seattle office talked a lot about what's going on with the markets. This week, we're going to talk about technology and our experience here at Cutler for what our clients have been doing to help themselves as they want to stay in the home longer, or what their kids are doing to help them. So most important part here, we do talk a lot of different technology providers. There are some specific companies that we mention. It's not an endorsement of any of them necessarily. Some of them are just examples, and there are a litany of them out there. As I was going through and doing the research to get ready for this presentation, I can tell you there is no lack of providers out there for people trying to help seniors. I think if I had to give you one piece of advice here at the beginning before we get started too far, don't go unless it's really specifically designed and a great product from a company that's been doing it for a very long time. Try not to go with the devices that are specifically designed to tailors. You can get an iPhone, you can get an Android, you can use the accessibility features on those to make the idea, the text, to make the icons, to make all of that bigger and more accessible. And then it's technology that you know how to use, or those around you know how to use. So don't go for the specific technology unless it really makes sense for you. Otherwise, it's great to just go with the mainline technology, as we'll talk about a little bit more here. So a little background, we're going to try to answer two questions. And really, the most important is for the next generation of retirees, those of you that are just now retiring, have been retired for a little bit longer, or are looking to retire in a number of years. You're going to be retired likely for a longer time than you had. So it's not about adding years. This conversation today is about adding life, adding value, adding time, or adding a better quality to that time. And maybe that is, in your definition, traveling more or staying in your home longer. And I think that is really, for most of our clients, the item that they most focus on. How do I stay in my home longer? How do I stay independent longer? And I will warn you, as a disclosure, it is very easy to look at technology and say, this is going to solve a lot of my problems. And today's actual presentation is talking about what is a pending utopia of technology to help retirees and seniors live longer, better, more full lives. But there's absolutely no replacement for picking up the phone and calling your kid, or calling your parent, or calling those that you're caring for. The technology can lull you into a little bit of a false sense. Make sure that you address that. And second, or you call them. And second, and probably even more importantly, we hear a lot out of the Silicon Valley about privacy and how much importance there is on privacy, and why we think privacy is and keeping your information private or to yourself is important. With an adult caregiver, so if you're providing care to your parents or to another person, there's a whole nother level of complexity in terms of privacy and disclosure, and one that you need to have a conversation with at the beginning before implementing any of the ideas that we're going to talk about today. And that is this: you have parents or caregivers that have probably been independent for a very long time, and now you're going to start taking some of that independence away. You're going to start monitoring things. You're going to start helping them. And it's all in the idea of making life better for them and easier for them. But there is a privacy concern. What information should you have? If you have a single parent, do you want to know this information? And how do you make sure that there is the appropriate walls or barriers or understanding between both parties, both the parents and the kids, the caregivers and the care providers, to make sure that not just financial information for what is typically considered a vulnerable group is protected, but also their privacy. So having said that, I think we've covered the disclosures. We're going to try to answer 2 questions for you today. The first is, how can technology help? Meaning, what can technology do to help you out, help you stay in your home longer, and as we've talked about, adding more quality of life to what are increasingly longer lives. And then second, what specific technologies are available now to help add life to those longer lives? And to get us started, we've got some great news. Here's our first slide that says what's going to happen to you. There are, or what could happen with you, a lot of options. 10 or 15 years ago, the very first thing that people probably asked about when looking at a retirement community is, how close is the nearest college? Or, can I get online learning, or can I get in-person learning? And now we've got online learning. You don't have enough money to stay in your house, but you've got 3 bedrooms that the kids are no longer using. You've got an Airbnb option. You've got a lot of experience. You are highly valued, and employers are looking to hire you, but you want to travel. You want to have your independence. Telecommuting is now an option for many seniors today. There are a lot of options available that were not available to your parents. And when we talk about the technology utopia, in many ways, we're not talking about technology that's in the future. We're talking about technology that's here today and able to help you as you go about your daily life. So many issues facing seniors today. Older Americans are living longer, which means medical help. How do they get to those appointments? How do they get around? How do they live an independent life? How do they do grocery shopping? Their children have moved away. The millennials have gone to college, and they've generally stayed where they moved. It's a broad generalization. I'm making that generalization because it's more true for this generation than any other generation before. The kids aren't necessarily moving back to their hometown. They're not necessarily being a part of their parents' lives in the same physical way. They're not coming home and helping change light bulbs. They're not next door to take you to your doctor's appointment. So children moving away, very significant issues facing baby boomers and other retirees today. And the first on that list, everybody will tell you, loneliness, number 1. It is a health concern, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the lack of local support and care. Nearly 50 million of us are providing unpaid care to another person. And that continues to go up as the boomers retire. Then there's more issues as these children have moved away. Divorce, both earlier in life and now what has been a booming phenomenon of gray divorce, has put parents and children kind of pitted against each other in a position where they have to decide, what is the next step? Are you going to move to support mom and be close to mom? Or are you going to help dad now that they've divorced? Which sibling is going to do it? Are you both going to do it? And if so, which kid is going to do better with mom versus which kid is going to be better at dad? A lot of conflict in that conversation, potentially. A lot of opportunity for disappointment. You picked the wrong parent. It didn't go well. You got stuck with the parent that couldn't help you with your kids as much necessarily. A lot of resentment that we're hoping to avoid, and part of that can be coming through the better use of technology to make sure that the burden or the perceived burden of taking care of an older adult can be lessened, both on those that are providing it and the sense of I guess obligation on their part, on the adult's part, on their senior's part, can also be lessened, so that they don't have a guilt as to how care later in life can work. Living longer, medical help. First, foremost, technology is only as good as it is implemented. New iPhone, our Apple Watch is out. This is truly the first mobile medical device. It can tell somebody if you have fallen down. It can monitor your heart rate. It tells you how many steps you've taken. It allows you to communicate with people. It is an amazing piece of technology. The problem is you now have to implement that piece of technology. Who's going to come up and set it up for you? Who's going to remind you to charge it? Are you going to wear it every day? There is a lot of technology. It is an amazing thing for you to do. And I've had clients that have walked in my office and said, hey, look at my new Apple Watch, and let me show you what it can do. But for many of us, that is a real challenge as to how do I use all of the technology, and maybe that's not the best choice. There are simpler ones. Maybe a Fitbit, shown here on your screen, is that simpler technology. It's just a reminder that you need to get up and walk, right? Being ambulatory is so important to seniors, and just having that sit on your wrist and say, hey, have you taken your steps on a battery that lasts months instead of hours, is a great next step to just remind people. But maybe that is also too complicated or too much to remember. We had a client whose husband had Alzheimer's, or I guess a husband-wife combination client. The husband had Alzheimer's, and as many of you know, patients with Alzheimer's are prone to wandering. This client didn't necessarily do that. However, the wife was very concerned that he could end up walking out in the middle of the night, and she came up with a brilliant plan, super low technology to some extent, but also always going to be used, which is probably the more important one, which is she figured if he was going to walk out the door, he was going to put on his shoes. So she tied a tile to his laces so that when he put on his shoes, she now had a built-in GPS tracker to notify her if he went too far, where he was, and to make sure that no matter what happened, if the shoes were on, she could find her husband with Alzheimer's. Very low technology. I think this version of the tile cost $29, and it provided a higher degree of comfort knowing that she could sleep through the night because her husband wasn't leaving at 3 in the morning to go wander the neighborhoods. And then finally, and this is one that could be used for adults that are providing care to their parents, to children who are adults who have children at home. And this is this version I'm showing on the screen now is the Ring. It is a doorbell and a video camera with a motion detector. A lot of people use it to make sure that packages that are left on the door stay on the doorstep and that they don't have to worry about somebody coming up and stealing them. Parents will use it to see when their children come home from school to make sure they got home safely and on time without necessarily giving them a phone to call back and tell them this. But for seniors and their adult caregivers, this could also be used for monitoring the door to make sure that if they're leaving at a time and place that they shouldn't be leaving, that a notification goes to the adult caregiver to make sure that they are on top of where mom and dad are and that their location. Obviously, this is one of those privacy issues we talked about earlier, being able to monitor who's coming and going from your parents' house. Very intrusive technology, probably not for everybody, but something that we should, look at. It's a low cost, simple to install, pretty straightforward way to help monitor and work with your parents, but it comes, like most good technology, with a lot of these privacy concerns. So living longer, medical help, issues for you to kind of ponder as we talk about this presentation. Average Americans over the age of 65 are taking at least 5 pills a day, and a trip and fall at home or a slip and fall within the home. One of the major concerns that most people have as to independent living and being able to stay out of assisted living. So first up, MedMinder. This is just an example of one. I probably found 20 service providers that did this when I was online, but this is a digital pill dispenser. An adult child fills or caregiver fills the medicine tray, then programs the schedule online so that you don't necessarily have to be there. You are filling out the schedule as to when mom and dad should take the pills online, and then you get to check online whether or not mom and dad have complied with that. So at pill time, the dispenser, and if you think about a pill dispenser being Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the typical one, this one lights up when it is time to take that pill. So it beeps and it lights up. And if you don't come take your pills, you're going to get a notification on your phone that says, hey, maybe you're not home, but it's time to take your pills. Please take your pills. And then the next level is you can have recorded, as the caregiver, you can have recorded a message that says, hey, Dad, it's 2 o'clock. I saw you haven't taken your pills. Please take your pills. And if you still haven't complied at that point, a phone call goes to the adult caregiver to say, your dad has not taken the last 3 pills. There is an issue here. Do you want to follow up with Dad? It's a terrific product for parents that have a little bit of dementia or have a problem remembering some of the details in their life. I think for example, know I set reminders all day long because I forget these things. Pills are one of those very important things to set a reminder for, and MedMinder sorts it out. So whether you're actually doing it or you have somebody coming in to help you fill in the pills, that mom or dad know when those pills can be taken. Next, CareZone. This is a free app that buzzes the phone when it's time to take pills. Again, just like MedMinder, but it's a little bit of a different one because it's just an app. You share the medication and other important information. What's cool about this app is when you get the prescription from the pharmacy, you take a picture of it with your cell phone. It loads it in automatically, loads in when they're supposed to take it, pre-populates a lot of the information so that you're not manually putting in all this information. It doesn't dispense the pills. So this is a little bit more hands-off because it does just provide a cell phone reminder. This is kind of the higher tech of the two because it's not physically doing it, but it is interacting with a smartphone and providing that. Alarm.com, and this is Alarm, this is probably more so than any of the other ones we talk about, the general example as opposed to a specific example, as I have no example or I have no experience with Alarm.com, but this one ties in with your Wi-Fi connected devices at home. And if you've bought a device in the last couple of years, there's a really good chance it's already Wi-Fi connected. So Alarm.com, you set it up, you know, for example, my wife at our home, nothing happens at home until she's had her coffee. And in fact, the boys say, nobody talked to mom until she's had her coffee. So I would be able to say, if by 9 a.m. my wife had not had her coffee, there's a problem. And Alarm.com provides services that will work with your Wi-Fi connected coffee pot to say, it's 10 a.m. and the coffee hasn't come on, why not? Maybe we should put a call in to mom or dad and check on them. It has other features as well. Obviously, any of the Internet of Things, any Wi-Fi connected device is going to be able to work with this. That's a broad generalization, but I think it's mostly true. But there's next level connectivity that can also be provided on this. I was talking the other day with my mom, who in preparation for getting older and being retired and in a home where she needs to protect herself, her husband, and what they're, and I guess hedging against any dementia that might come about, built in a switch to her stove so that if she leaves the range on, a switch will kill it and it keeps her from forgetting. Well, Alarm.com now works with ranges. So if you leave your electric or gas range on for too long, say it's an hour, it will beep or notify somebody to tell you you've left the range on. Real significant safety concern. It's a problem that I think even at my age I've done. I've left the range on and walked away and thought, geez, why did I forget to do that? As we get older, even more significant to be able to tie into some of these things. So it's not just monitoring, right? It's not just telling you, hey, the coffee pot hasn't been turned on, but it's also proactively monitoring some of the devices that in the home that might be more of a safety concern. And then finally, you might need somebody to help you with these items. 2 examples, Care.com and Beacon Home Care are just 2 examples of service providers that can help you in the home or help your parents in the home if you live afar. Beacon Home Care, for example, they're going to range in services from somebody just come over and have a conversation once a day or once a week to check on them, all the way through somebody that comes in and cooks meals to somebody who does the pills for you on a weekly basis, somebody who helps with dementia care on a more intense basis. And then Care.com is essentially a third-party service that hooks you up or I guess hooks you up with service providers in your area that provide in-home care. These are, again, not an endorsement, but an example of one being a third-party service, the other being an actual utilized service. Both are doing background checks and making sure that the person that is in your home didn't come from Craigslist, but is coming with references, endorsements, liability insurance, and other items to make sure that your parents or you are safe in the home. I think the Beacon Home Care model is terrific from the point of view that you might not be able to afford somebody that comes in the home once a week and takes care of things around the house on a full-time basis, but maybe there's just an occasional need, and being able to have that occasional need come into the home much more attractive. So next, the future is here. Transportation is the number 2 expense in retirement behind healthcare. Number 2 is transportation. So we already have a healthcare conversation. Now we need to get there, get a ride in minutes. Don't worry, the Jetsons aren't here yet. This was disappointing for me to hear that we're not flying cars yet, but we are close. We've got some options. You've got Lyft, you've got Uber. Obviously, the self-driving car hasn't yet arrived, but for those of us that don't live close to our parents, or maybe we have a job where we can't get away to help our parents get there, or we are the parent, we are living independently, and we're just not as comfortable driving anymore. Lyft and Uber, terrific options. If you're an Uber user, I actually can set Uber up to pick my parents up, take them to an appointment. If there's a question or concern, their phone is assigned. Their phone number is assigned to the account. All of that's done from my phone in case my parents don't have a smartphone. I'm doing it remotely. I'm calling the car. The car is being delivered. I've taken 2 minutes of my workday to do it. I know that mom and dad have gotten to the appointment safely, and I can do the reverse when they're coming home. It is the next best thing to the self-driving car, that it will be the utopia, but I think it actually solves another issue for many of us trying to stay in our home longer, trying to avoid the assisted living, which is, well, until we get self-driven or autonomously driven cars, there is always the issue of worrying about accidents or tickets, or just not driving as well. And I think as I reflect upon my grandparents when they were in their 90s, our biggest concern, or their biggest concern they shared with us, is how do I drive at night? Well, maybe they're comfortable driving during the day. Lyft and Uber are terrific for helping them drive at night, get to where they want, be social, and see their friends, because that number 1 thing that we talked about already, your children have moved away, and older Americans and their healthcare providers report loneliness is the number 1 health concern. All of the other health concerns, although many, yes, come from life choices like heart disease or lung cancer, but they are exacerbated by loneliness. Loneliness is the one thing that can absolutely destroy somebody's health in a very meaningful way. And there's no question that not only are the millennials dealing with this, and the Generation X and the baby boomers and the greatest generation, we're all dealing with the sense of loneliness. And there's probably a debate to be had as to whether or not loneliness comes from the apps that we're using, or whether or not we're using the apps to find connectivity in life. But I can tell you from my own experience, connectivity from grandparents to grandchildren, connectivity from my wife and I, connectivity for the relationships that I have are increasingly dependent on technology, especially when we have distance. And one of the things that I can definitely share, having lived overseas for a number of years, was it's really hard to build a connection over the phone. And I know we all look at that, and maybe some of you are sitting there saying, over the phone, Matt, I've been using the phone my entire life. Or for those of you on the phone that are old, or on the webinar that are older, maybe I've been using the phone most of my life. But it still is hard. You can't see their facial expression. You can't see the meaning behind the words. And that's why whether it's FaceTime or Skype or one of the other video conferences, absolutely one of the more important technologies that you as an older adult can learn. It is not a very difficult technology, but it does take a smartphone. It does take a couple of extra steps. It could use an iPad if you're going to do it at home, but being able to be away and watch the grandchildren's first steps, be away and be able to check on things that are happening with your kids and with your grandkids, that connectivity. And I would say, just thinking about my own kids, I do a fair amount of travel. And if I'm on the phone, I always kind of wonder if they're really paying attention to me. And I think you probably have had that same conversation. Is my kid listening to me? Is my grandparent really engaged or grandchild really engaged? And this video conferencing, looking them in the eye, seeing what's happening, knowing that they're participating in the conversation, I think both deepens the conversation and allows for, I guess, a longer conversation in terms of what's happening in their lives as you're going through them growing up with you, maybe seeing them once or twice a year if you're lucky. If you don't know what this logo is, you probably should. And I'll just kind of broaden right here. This is the logo I'm talking about. That is the Instagram logo. That is the #1 sharing app amongst childbearing children, right? So your adult children, they are using Instagram to post pictures. And I know we could have a debate as to whether or not they should be sending you pictures or getting involved or emailing them to you. But the fact is they are sharing to Instagram because it helps them. Their friends see it, they're saving it, they're posting it for future posterity. But in conjunction with Skype, you've got a real opportunity. I don't know that my mother-in-law or my mom or anybody in my family has actually had, or sorry, any of the adults, the older adults in my family have actually posted anything to Instagram, but I know they're all pretty good users of it. They want to see what's going on with their grandkids as their grandkids have gotten old enough to have Instagram accounts. They want to know what's going on with the younger grandkids as we have posted pictures of their younger grandkids, and seeing what's going on in their life. And then in conjunction with Skype, being able to say, hey, I saw that picture from your soccer game today. That was pretty cool. How did you go? Really deepens the relationship. These are two critical pieces of loneliness or overcoming loneliness that you should probably consider. Obviously, years from now, Instagram will have completely dated this webinar because it will be something else. But at this point in time, that's the one. And then the last thing to talk about in terms of connectivity and kind of overcoming loneliness are the online blogs. Stitch is the #1 that's out there right now. It's the most used. Connected Living is another. Silver Surfers is more of the online chat room again. And the reason I bring these up, because I think many of us will say, well, you know, I don't have a problem meeting people, or I do have a lot of friends. What these services do are connect you with people that have similar interests. So if you love going out and hiking and, you know, going back to this living across country, what happens if you move cross country to be closer to your kids and your grandkids, and now you have nobody to talk to because you've left your friends behind? Well, first, use Skype, say hi to your friends, but second, find somebody with similar interests. Use one of these to connect you in your new area with those that you know, have similar interests. You're starting off at the very beginning with something in common. And yes, at some level, some of these could be used as dating sites, and maybe that's the common interest. But the other part of it is, it's a great way to connect with people. It's a great way to meet people online. And I can say both Connected Living and Stitch, which I signed up on both, background checks, a lot of due diligence, because again, going back to the idea that seniors are a little bit more vulnerable, they want to make sure that their community is a solid and protected community. And then the last thing I want to point out on this page, and I probably could have put this anywhere, it's these connected devices, whether it's the Amazon Echo, the Google Home device. Imagine the scenario. You come in, you're living by yourself at this point, your spouse has passed, unfortunately. You are walking into a house that's a little bit dark after getting out of your Uber, and being able to say, you know, hey, Google, turn on the lights, and have a couple of lights come on reduces your tripping hazard, helps with the lights. You don't go fumbling for the light switches. Being able to say, hey, Alexa, turn on some music, fills the void of the room, right? Says, okay, it's not as quiet in here. I'm not as lonely. I've got some music, something that's familiar, something that's going to take me back to a time where I was building memories instead of living on the memories. Alexa, call my kids. Google, will you order me something? Having one of these devices in the home not just reduces loneliness, although that's, like I said, where I put it, but it gets you more connected with the world, reduces some of the safety issues by turning on lights and helping. This goes back to that implementation thing. For most of us, we're not going to be able to program our Nest thermostat to work with our Alexa so that we can turn it on remotely and change the temperature. It might take some help to get that done. However, it's probably help worth investing into or looking at. And one of the groups that can help you with that is Best Buy. Not a plug for Best Buy, but it does go to show how involved the big technology firms and the retail firms have gotten into this whole idea that your children have moved away and you now have a lack of local support. So mom and dad come home. I think about my parents, super handy. They've never asked me to actually come down and help them hang something or hang a picture or change a light bulb. But a lot of us, as they get older, maybe they won't be as healthy or able, or maybe they just don't want to. Couple of services here, TaskRabbit, Hello Alfred, as examples. These are services where they have done background checks and references on service providers. They are the typical handyman. Hey, I need you to come in and do this and that. You can do this remotely if you're traveling, if you live across the country. This is something that you can help out your parents with, or as an adult, you can log on and use something, say, I just need this door fixed. Yesterday, I came home, my wife had bought new hardware for the door. She asked me to get it fixed. So I went ahead and fixed it for her. I completely destroyed the door, and she said I should have gone to TaskRabbit, to which I said, yes, you should have. So these are absolutely great resources for that handyman, run some errands, help you out around the house. Obviously, like all of these things, they come with a cost, but knowing that they have had background checks and knowing that they have had references does provide a peace of mind that makes that at some level worth it. Nutrition, and this goes to that point of how involved you get in your parents' lives. So many older adults don't eat well. It's just not a part. It's, you've been cooking for big families maybe, and now you're on your own and just by yourself. You just don't want to get to the store because it's too much hassle. A couple of options here. The first one, Instacart, down here in the bottom left corner, and many services like it, whether it is Walmart, whether it is Costco, and then obviously Instacart is the biggest. They'll deliver your groceries right to the house. You order it up, or maybe your kids order it up for you. Groceries get delivered. You've taken away that step of, I just don't want to deal with the mall or the grocery store and the grocery store parking lot. The groceries come to you. But what if you just don't want to cook that much or cook at all, or you don't want to think about what to put together? A lot of services like Blue Apron are out there where the entire meal comes to you. Meals for 2 or more people. They come at the frequency that you want, 2 a week, 2 a month, however you want to set it up. Terrific service. I've used Blue Apron at home. I think it's great. It's actually what we're using to help our kids learn how to cook, because I don't have to monitor them as much. I know it's all put together. And then this last one, Balance by Bistro MD. I can't vouch for that. I don't know what it is. However, it claims to be the #1 single serving provider of pre-made meals, meaning they send you meals that are set up for one. I love this idea because from my perspective, when nutrition is an issue, I don't know that, 1, I can monitor my parents, 2, that I want to monitor, or 3, they want me to monitor how many calories they're eating. Are they having vegetables? Are things going smoothly? And having that one service meal, even if it's twice a week, I know that the well-balanced meal is coming. It's meal for one, and they're able to really make sure that the nutrition that they need as they live independently at their own home is taken care of. Next one, Bottom right corner down here. This is rinse. I only bring rinse up because it's just an example of services that are out there. This service for essentially the cost of your laundromat will come pick up your clothes, bring them home, hang them up, fold them, put them away if you want. Obviously, bending over as we get older and getting into the washing machine becomes more and more of an issue. Just like Hello Alfred and TaskRabbit, Rinse is just another one of those service providers. They'll come pick up your clothes, do your laundry, and help with the tasks that make living at home just a little bit harder. And then finally, one on this lack of support idea. And this one I think is probably one of the more touchy ones and probably one of the more important ones, which is, and I've highlighted LastPass mostly because that's what we use here at the firm, but it's also because I think it's a good idea. When you're getting more connected, there is that chance you forget your password or you forget how to log into things. How do you do that when you have forgotten? One of the features that LastPass has is the ability to share your passwords with a kid, with an adult child, with a caregiver, so that you can share some passwords with some people. You can share medical issues or medical files. You can have the documentation that you need to have support from your caregivers logged into one spot that's secure and monitored by those caregivers. And like I said, you can split it up amongst different caregivers. So not everybody has access to everything, but there's enough there that if your children need to step in and help support you, they have the information they need to provide that support to you. Lots of examples of how you do that. They could be as simple as starting an Excel spreadsheet and saying this tab is who the doctors are. This tab is when the appointments are. Obviously, we wouldn't suggest saving passwords in Excel, but we know plenty of people that password protect an Excel file and they do save passwords in there. So getting that data together allows you remotely to be supported by those caregivers that might not be there. And if you have a smartphone and if you're getting into the technology, having that ability to share with them, really important, something that we'd love you to consider. And then finally, and most importantly, are your documents current? Has your spouse passed and you haven't updated your advance directive? Is this something that you should be doing with a kid or another caregiver? Absolutely would be negligent. This is, if we didn't mention it, it's not a technology issue. I fully understand that, but it is important. Make sure you've checked with your legal provider, your state attorney, whoever you're using, to make sure that your will, trust, and advance directives are updated. And as long as I'm talking about advance directive, if you're listening to this webinar and you've got children who have left for college, do they have an advanced directive? Do you have the ability to help them medically if your 18, 19, 20-year-old child has a medical crisis that they need help with? Without an advanced directive, HIPAA says the doctors can't work with you. So make sure you're getting an advanced directive. It is a standard form in almost every state. It may not take an attorney to get that done, but it is a critical piece of information or a critical document for you to be using. And cake.com, I provided an example, especially in this situation where you're trying to get advanced directives for kids. Cake is intended to help you kind of bring your will, trust, and advanced directives together. For those of you that have maybe simpler needs, it might actually be good enough to fully replace the legal spot of it. And we work with a lot of state attorneys. I think that the services they provide are invaluable and absolutely would encourage you to use it, only up until the point that is, if you don't have anything, do something. So do Cake, call your attorney, do whatever it takes, but make sure that these are updated. And then finally, under the question section today, when in doubt, if nothing else has been talked about today, send your parents a note, send them the mail. This is the highest piece of technology that Ben Franklin ever invented. Maybe that was actually the lightning kite, but postal service. What I loved with my 90-year-old grandmothers was going to Costco.com, putting pictures in and printing them to the local warehouse for my wife and I to frame of our kids, but at the same time, clicking buy 2 more copies and having them automatically mailed to the grandmothers. We forget so often that we might not be able to email, we might not get on it, but sending a note, sending pictures, picking up the phone and calling your parents or calling your kids, just reestablishing that connection, so much more important than any of this technology we've talked about. Take that moment, make that happen. If you do have questions on any of this, please reach out, call us here at Cutler. Obviously, my name is Matt Patten. I'm happy to answer any of your questions, and any of your advisors can get you the answers to any of the questions you may have had. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar. We appreciate you joining us and looking forward to helping you with anything you might need on your investment side, or I guess now on your technology side in the future. Thank you.